Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before we jump into our next segment about TvP and low economic tier play, let me remind you guys, if you missed any of these segments or you see, this game looks cool, I want to see the full game, I missed it when it was live, go ahead, youtube.com/official. MLGSC2. You can find every game there from the WCS Premier League, WCS Challenger League, WCS qualifiers, the MLG Winter Championship games, all the winter season showdowns, all the rules of engagements. Play of the days are actually pretty awesome. We've been cranking out a lot of cool ones from WCS content. A lot of awesome stuff there. Go ahead, check it out. youtube.com/official. MLGSC2. Everything there is free and 1080p quality. So our next segment is going to be about low econ TvP play. And we're going to talk about how to, basically, if you're gearing up to do a two-base attack, a couple harassment options you have. Then we're going to talk about the mid-game plan from a Terran perspective, and then also how to properly defend a choke point if your opponent is trying to attack you and you're not quite strong enough to go out and just meet him in even terms. Or even if you are, why do that, right? Why take a fair fight when there's an unfair one that you could take? So, what we see here is Drunkenboi is not really big on building workers because he's going for a two-base timing. I mean, he's still building a few. He's still going to get a few more. But he's going for this Hellbat bio timing that we've seen a lot of players do. And he opened the reason why he's a little short on workers is because he opened up Expand a little bit later and getting these Marines and these Widow Mines out here. And the idea is, okay, he needs to wait for the Medivacs, the Hellbats, and more Marines and Stim to launch his real timing. But until then, he still has the Medivacs. He still has a couple of Hellbats. So why not go and do some harass, right? Make some use of the units. And the one thing you have to be very careful of is if he was taking a third command center right now, then the focus of this harassment would be literally kills economy and keep him scared to move out so he can't go and kill me. But because he's not, right, he's not even building SCVs, he's not building a third command center, he's not building E-base to upgrade, he's just building production facilities to the two-base timing in about a minute or two. The focus of this harassment should be force out photon overcharges, force out force fields, and lose minimal units. So here it was hard to tell if that was worth it or not. 3 force fields, and then he got 1 sentry, but he lost a medevac full of units, right? He came in with 2 medevacs full, now only has 1. So wasn't 100% clear if it was worth it or not. It probably still was for the force fields and get rid of that 1 sentry. But just make sure that your goal is in line with your follow-up plan. So if you're macroing, your goal should be keep them distracted. So keep medevacs here and just make sure they're contained. Try to kill SCVs. If you're following a 2-base timing, your goal should be take out key defensive units like sentries, force out photon overcharges, those type of things, and really, really make sure you don't lose units. Instead of just making sure that they're staying on defensive, just make sure you really minimize all those losses. So now we're going to see here he's going to go for this 2-base timing. And the typical thing with this is you get a bunch of Marines and Marauders, you drop the Hellbats onto sentries, and then they kill them, then your Marines and Marauders kill everything else. Pretty straightforward, standard idea, and then of course the Hellbats kill everything as well. Photon Overcharge is very good against this build, so he's trying to get up the ramp as fast as possible to engage. One of the things that helps counter Hellbat heavy play is just kiting with Stalkers to try to avoid their attacks. Be very proactive about kiting around with Stalkers. Because if you don't using kiting, the Hellbats are going to kill your units. And then the Colossus gets out, and along with the Photon Overcharge, it's enough to defend his attack. So the attack didn't quite work. If the Colossus didn't come out, it probably would have, because the 4 Marines would have just killed 4 Marines with that many medevacs supporting them. The Stalkers would have had a really tough time dealing with it. But as is, now we're in a situation where he has to come with his mid-game plan, right? So if you take a look at this, the economy is reasonably even from both players. And Drunkenboi is now taking a third. He's getting 1-1 upgrades. So his mid-game plan looks like he really wants to go into a macro-type game, right? He's really focused on that macro game situation. But the very important thing is you either want to do one of two things. You either need to gear up for another attack and go for that, which he doesn't have the production to do. He just doesn't. His opponent has Colossi out now and a bunch of gateways. He only has 3 barracks. He can't gear up for another timing. There's no infrastructure to be able to outproduce his opponent. So then if you can't go for an attack, you have to go for macro, and that's where you really want to make sure you're going to saturate your bases. If you're not going to attack in the next minute or two, make sure to saturate your bases. If you have 2 bases, that's like 52 to 60 workers, depending on how much you want to saturate. If you have 3, of course, it's a lot more than that. So, and this is a situation where your mid-game plan, you need to be building those SCVs, or you can get farther and farther behind just from not building them. So we can see now on economics, he still has 46 SCVs, which isn't nice. Of course, State has been delaying probe production because he's been worried about an attack instead of thinking about a third base. So it's not as bad as it could have been. But imagine right now he could have had 60 SCVs and then he'd just be significantly ahead, right? Just macro-wise. So always try to be a little more on top of the SCV production unless they're trying to end the game within the next minute or two. So now going forward, he's again trying to put in some pressure, and he's actually pulled like 4 SCVs with the weirdest type of timing attack ever. Because like I said, he doesn't have the production to be able to outproduce State, and you can see that if you look at the army sizes. I mean, State's army is 800 supply large, or 800 resources larger, excuse me. And that's not even talking about the fact that so much of Drunkenboi's army is going to be in rallied units across the map, as you can see here, right? All of these guys are, you know, crossing the map, not be able to participate in an aggressive fight on its opponent's side of the map. So going forward here, Drunkenboi's going to start to fall behind just a little bit because he doesn't have the economy he could have had. Not necessarily going to fall too far behind, but it's still a situation where you don't really want to be at, where you just don't have SCVs and you also can't end the game because your opponent has you outproduced. So going forward, you see State here just macroing up, and all of a sudden State's doing that thing where he starts to transition to Templar, right? He's getting his charge now, he's getting 2-2. Next thing that's going to follow now that he's on 6 gases is going to be that Templar Archives, right? And there it goes right now. And unfortunately, Drunkenboi doesn't really have the economy to get ghosts out in addition to having enough Vikings to deal with the Colossi. So Colossi keep cranking out. He's got to get Medivacs and Vikings. He can't afford a second Starport and the Ghost Academy both. So fast forward to some more passive play, some light harass by State here, being kind of annoying, being definitely efficient for just what a couple Zealots are doing. It's nice damage done, but it's not going to really decide the game. What's going to decide the game is State realizing he's got a timing here, right? At this point in the game, if you look at what's happening, State says, okay, I've got, looking at unit counting station, right? What does he have? Well, he has 5 Colossi and 5 High Templar, right? 5 and 5. And his opponent only has 3 Vikings and 4 Ghosts. So basically, State, because he got ahead just from being a little bit better on building probes, he has a much, much better sophisticated tech army. But if he sits around for too long, Drunkenboi can start rebuilding Vikings, adding more Ghosts, and it could become an equal late game. With State maybe in a slight advantage because he can start adding more gateways and he'll be ahead in production just because he has a little bit extra money. But it would be more dangerous. So State wants to attack right now while he has all this tech units that don't have a good counter, specifically the Colossi versus Vikings. And Drunkenboi wants to be on a defensive. And this is where defending the choke is super, super, super important. And the thing about a choke, the reason why choke points favor the defender in general is because it's a small area, right? And your opponent can't have that many units inside that area because it's small. Pretty straightforward, right? But it only works if they have to get into the choke, right? So if there's a 1 square passageway and you have a Zealot standing in front of there, a Zergling has to get into the choke to fight the Zealot. A Marine can sit outside that choke point and shoot the Zealot, and all of a sudden the Zealot's the guy in the choke point, and he's sitting on his own getting shot, right? So it's all about positioning your units so your opponent has to be in a choke to engage you. So that means if this is your choke point right here, you're trying to defend, you look at the range of your opponent's units. You say, okay, most of his units are Stalkers, right? And there's some Colossi, but let's just say we'll make sure the Colossi have to go in the back of the choke to hit me, and the Stalkers have to go in the front. So his whole army could be in here to hit me, right, in this zone. Well, where should I position my units to make sure that he has to come this close? It's not going to be right in front of the choke. You don't want to be anywhere in this zone. This is very important to stay out of this zone. And you want to keep your guys behind this line. And the reason why is because if you're in this yellow zone right here, all of a sudden your opponent doesn't have to go in the choke to fight you. He can just shoot you from over here. And all those units, it's just a line versus a line staring across the choke, shooting each other. All right? It's like if you dig a ditch, but then you just stand up on the other side of the ditch, and you're just shooting a gun at a guy, and it's like, how's the ditch protect you, right? It doesn't. You have to stand really far back, so he has to go through the ditch to get at you, and then when he's going through the ditch, you have the advantage. But going forward here, we'll take a look at this battle, and we'll just keep an eye on those zones that I drew as we talk about this. And actually, let's fast. You can see here some storms are going down here, but the idea is, do you see why the storms went down? It's because the Templar could cast Storm from behind here because he was in that yellow zone. Templar are the same range as Colossi roughly, so he needs to stay out of this yellow zone. Again, he's in a yellow zone. Colossi are shooting all those guys. Stalkers are shooting all those guys. And the Protoss doesn't have to enter a choke. We can see here now Time Orbs mean he's stuck in the yellow zone. And all these Colossi, they're not in the choke. they're all having a fun time, all shooting. They're shooting clumped up Terran units. The Stalkers are all, you know, these Stalkers right here that normally wouldn't be able to shoot, they're all able to shoot because, unfortunately, Drunkenboi was fighting in that yellow zone, not really utilizing choke. So, of course, you see there, GG, he got ran over. And to be honest, even if he set up that concave perfectly, he might have lost that fight still. I mean, it was 5 Colossi versus 3 Vikings, a very difficult fight for Terran to win. But if he had a beautiful spread to minimize Colossi damage and he forced the Colossi to get onto that ridge, where then all of a sudden if the Colossi have to be in his red zone, he can't put all the Stalkers in the red zone, and the Vikings can be back up here all shooting the Colossi, and the Vikings can't get picked up by the Stalkers easily. It would have gotten much, much, much closer. I mean, state was enough, he might have won anyway. But the idea is in a close situation, or even in this one, he might have been able to win by properly using the choke. Always make sure the point of a choke, your opponent, make them engage them when they enter the choke, not before they enter the choke, or else it kind of defeats the whole point of it. So this wraps up our second segment here. Of course, a couple things to really focus on as a Terran player, or as any player actually in general. This doesn't matter the race. If you're not attacking your opponent in the next 2 minutes with pretty much any race, you should be building more workers. Unless they're about to, let's say like they're going to kill you and you can't afford the workers. Now, if you're Terran or Protoss, most of the time, even if they're going to kill you, you actually should still be building workers just because you only have X barracks or X warp gates. So once you are constantly producing with those, extra money might as well go to workers. They can help on defense a little bit. So in general, just if you're not going to attack in the next 2 minutes, always build workers. Of course, Zerg trying to react to defense is a little more complicated, but Terran or Protoss for sure. Always build workers if you're not going to attack. And then also, using a choke point, make sure you defend it at a spot where your opponent has to enter that choke point. You don't just want to be exchanging blows to them over it. You want them to get inside it, or else their units are cramped, they can't move around, and you have a better concave on them. So wraps up our second segment. We'll take a short break and be on to our third segment.